Okay, ready? All right. Hello out there in Packer Nation, and welcome to Absolute Packer Podcast, episode number 44. I think we're going to call this episode the Green Bay Steelers, just because of all the stuff going on, rumors and whatnot of two potential Steelers players maybe coming to the Packers, which I don't think is going to happen. But anyway, I'd like to introduce my two other boys. We got Elliot Christensen on one side and Jeremy Hautala on the other. What's up, boys?
Hey.
All right. So, yeah, nothing more to be said.
Nothing.
No.
You know what? There's a ton. You know what? I've been kind of like brewing over things to talk about in the off season, and like there's tons of stuff that we could talk about. So we could talk about.
It's never a dull moment.
Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah, no, it's literally 27 or 24/7, 365 news cycle. And some of it's just annoying, but at the same time, you're like, well, this is the way it is. So yeah, I'm obviously motoring through it, but today we got a fair amount of a variety of topics to go over. That some to talk with the Packers themselves, some with league stuff, and then some with some other rumors and whatnot, and then we can pop into more of just like roster moves and things that may happen. So first thing I'd like to discuss today happened earlier this past week, I believe, might have been right in the beginning, was we finally got an update on Cole Madison, the Packers. I believe he was the 5th round draft pick guard. And he was, I think he came to minicamp, so correct me if I'm wrong, but then he did not report to training camp, and there was no reasons given. I mean, essentially a year went by before we figured out what the heck's going on. And then we come to find out that one of his teammates at did he go to Washington State? I can't remember his exact college. Washington State. Okay. One of his teammates, I think late in the season, or maybe even it may have been even right after the season, he committed suicide. And when the doctors kind of opened him up and did an autopsy, so to speak, they looked at his brain. He had heavy doses of CTE. I think they said his brain looked like the brain of a 65-year-old person, and he's 21. So it's not good. And you have to believe, it didn't explicitly say it in the article, but you have to believe that Madison, once that happened, I mean, anybody close to you that commits suicide is bad enough. And then when you find out that CTE was really registering in there, I think you're finding more and more players that are giving pause to, careers in the NFL, even if it is a huge, amount of money. So, that's kind of what I thought about it. It's good just to hear from the guy, but I don't know if you have anything else to share on that.
No, the gentleman's name is Tyler Helinski. He was a quarterback for Washington State, a teammate of Madison's. He committed suicide on January 16th, 2018. And Madison had a really tough time moving on from that. And I think, if he was a smart guy, he probably spoke to some former NFL players like Chris Borland maybe, and, kind of got their hindsight on what brought them to their conclusion to, retire and get away from football. And I think he's to a point where, and this is just my opinion, but it just gets to the point where I think he looks at life in a whole bigger perspective and realizes that football isn't going to be the end all be all. And, there's a huge risk with it. A lot of these players do come out with CTE, brain trauma, and it's a debilitating and a significant injury, and it pretty much just makes your brain go completely wacko.
It turns to mush.
I mean, and it's scary because there's been many players. You got if there's two movies that you can watch out there, Brain Games and the Concussion, two great movies about the Brain Games is a documentary. It's really, really good. And it kind of just gives you hindsight perspective on how these players get to the point where they either want to take their life or they can't even function in life. Like they can't even go to the bathroom by themselves and are completely incapacitated, unlike a normal person. So it's really a scary, a scary injury, or I should say, a buildup of many, many hits that just build up over time. And
it's a disease, let's call it, it's beyond an injury.
Right. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I would, and I would venture to guess that when you think of offensive and defensive linemen, they're the ones that are on every play they're engaging with, the offensive line and the defensive linemen are basically crunching into each other on every single play. Those guys have to be more susceptible to it, because I think I read somewhere years ago that every down where they engage, literally almost every down is the equivalent of a tiny mini concussion with these guys. And I mean, you got 350-pound, huge, 6'8", whatever size guys just smashing into each other right in front of each other. So that makes a lot of sense too, that guys like that seem to be more susceptible to it. But I mean, the guy who ended up killing himself, his teammate, he was a quarterback. So that goes to show, probably talking from Pop Warner and whatnot, but I'll just venture to say that I doubt he's going to play in the league, and I can't blame him. And I hope he's in a good spot, on the downside, if you will, if you want to call it the more the side of the fans and the team itself. They could have really used him. They're short at guard, but at the same time, when you're facing something like that, let's just hope he makes the right decision, and I think and his head's in the right place. And you brought up Chris Borland. I think I had talked about that when I messaged you when you heard about it too. And I think Borland obviously played linebacker, University of Wisconsin. He's well known, obviously locally. He was a really good player. I don't know if he wasn't like a superstar, but he was really good. He was in the league 1 year and he quit. And I think his 1 year was it the 49ers he played with?
Yep, he was drafted by them.
He did really well. I mean, he started off a little slow, but then by the end of the year, I think he was a starter and he led the team in tackles, and he had really good stats, and he was on the upward climb after just one rookie year, and then he abruptly quit. And he made no bones about it that he quit because of CTE. He didn't want to risk CTE, and he didn't want to risk, his being 30 or 40 years old, and his life was, ostensibly over because of all this stuff. So you're going to see more and more of that, and it shouldn't be a surprise, so to speak.
Is it really that hard for us to fix football? I mean, I get that there's all this tradition, but I mean, there's some pretty basic things we could do to fix it so that, okay, so offensive, defensive lines, that this is a major problem. Well, back them up 5 feet, say they don't get to, head-on collision, and, move on.
Well, I think to your point, potentially, but I look at it as football is a sport where like the core aspects of it, if you will, it's all built around smashing into people. You could fix it, but kind of where I'm getting at is every time the NFL itself, in my mind, football's a beautiful game. The NFL is a joke. And it's just that they're doing everything they can to I'll say, to ruin the game. And I'm almost going down the other rabbit hole of officiating and slowing the game down and inconsistencies there. Now, player safety, that's obviously very important too. But if you're going to truly, fix those issues with CTE and things like that, you're going to have to make it flag football. That's the only way you can do it, because big guys are still getting bigger, faster, and stronger. Yeah.
But these are professional athletes. I'm still going to watch it. I mean,
I'm too.
You know what I mean? Like, big deal. Like, it's still going to be a great game. It might be a better game because you're not. You
don't have any empathy, Elliot. You're worrying me. I'm kidding.
I have the opposite. I have a ton of empathy. Like I don't. As a fan, I don't want my heroes to be injured for life.
I know. I was being facetious, but
yeah, like I mean, I want it fixed, and I like when I hear, oh, it's going to turn into flag football, I'm like, okay, and that would be bad. Why?
Well, to your point, if it turns. Okay, I see what you're saying. If football turned into something that was, they've talked about eliminating the kickoff and eliminating punts.
Yeah.
There's these little pieces. It's like a Jenga puzzle. They keep pulling these little things out until the whole thing comes crashing down.
That's
right?
Boring anyway. That should go away already.
I love that kind of shit. I love punts and I love kickoffs. I love that stuff. Now they're still not doing a very good job because they're flagging it every time. There's issues with penalties and flags and officiating. I'll give you that. But I mean, football. The inherent nature of it is tackling and hitting people, right? It's violent. Yeah. It's a violent sport. Now, so if they say they truly turned it into flag football, I would not watch that. I can confidently say I would turn the TV off.
There's truly no way that you can make the game any safer than what we currently have at this point without taking contact completely out of it.
Correct.
There's no way. No way.
I mean, I think you have to do something about, like you're saying, the micro concussions on the line. I think, something has to happen with these players that are, definitely susceptible to these life-changing injuries. I mean, that's not sustainable.
I agree. And I mean, they didn't know it was happening for a long, long time. So,
but we do now.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
I mean, when did they know it was starting to happen?
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. We know now.
Yeah, it's inconsequential. I hear you. It's kind of, it's in the past. But I'm kind of with Jeremy. If the only way to truly fix this stuff is you have to take collisions and you have to take hitting and the violence of it out of the game. That's the only way to do it.
And that's
how else can?
Then let's do it. Fine. What's wrong with that?
I couldn't watch that, and I wouldn't.
Really?
No.
So you don't watch other sports?
Not anymore. Not post E. coli. Before, well, I say that facetiously, but I mean, before I used to watch some Brewer games here and there, and then I used to. You're gonna laugh, but hell, I used to watch golf.
Yeah.
I can't watch golf anymore. This is post coli. When I woke up, and I'm like, I was watching golf or trying to watch golf months ago, and I'm like, this is the most boring shit I've ever seen in my life. So maybe I was fundamentally changed when I got really sick. I used to love to watch golf, so I'll make no bones about that. But football in and of itself, why I watch it, is because of the violent nature of it, because I live in Green Bay, Wisconsin, and we have a team. Don't get me wrong. But the core reason I watch football is to watch. There is, sometimes I think there is, for me, I don't know about everybody else, but I love a big smashing hit.
Mm-hmm.
Not a guy who's defenseless or anything like that, or cheap shots, but I like a good tackle. I like a good, what I'll call clean by the rules hit and stuff like that. And you're watching great athletes perform, feats that are incredible because you have a quarterback dropping back, and then you got a guy who's 300 pounds who can run a 4.7 40 who's trying to flatten him. There's something to me. Those are the inherent things about it that is why I watch it.
I get all that. I wouldn't. We all like it. The biggest blockbuster movies are violent, right? I'm gonna go see. I'll go see the Avengers. Right. Yeah. But that ain't gonna fly anymore. And I think that's okay. I mean, when you hear the superstars of the game, when you hear Brett Favre saying, "Yeah, I don't want my grandson playing football," that's like mind shattering.
It's not good for the league. It's odd for fans, and
it's mind shattering, but it's also a choice. I mean, everybody has a choice on what they want to do with their life. If they want to be a professional football player, you should know coming into it that there are inherent risks in playing it, just like hockey players have the same thing.
And everybody does now,
the same thing. Right. So, I mean, everybody is pretty educated on what each sport can, possibly do to themselves. So there's nothing out there that's being hidden anymore. These athletes know it's a violent game, and you can have serious repercussions during your career, or especially after your career, from the game itself. So it's a personal choice, and I don't want to restrict anybody's freedom to want to play football and then say, well, you know what, you have to put flags on it. We're not going to play tackle anymore. I believe in the personal freedom to do what you want. And if you want to play the sport, great. I will say Cole Madison, selfishly as a Packer fan, I hate that we're not going to probably have him as a player, but
I agree.
I respect the fact that he believes that he has greater confidence in himself to do something with his life outside of football than to play a game that could possibly injure him and possibly kill himself over it. More power to the guy. I totally commend him. That had to be a very difficult decision, and nobody should degrade him or call him bad names because of that. That's just poor choice. That's really
it takes a lot of balls, especially if you're a player in college who you basically know you're going to be drafted. You're not some fringe player. You know you're going to get you're going to get in some of the main parts of the main rounds of the draft.
Right.
So yeah, it's.
And as a professional athlete, nobody is going to make that kind of money in their lifetime. So you have that huge financial incentive. There's a lot of these guys, and I'm not going to name anybody at the top of my head, but there are plenty of guys out there like Sam Shields, for example. If he didn't have football, he wouldn't have been a millionaire.
Yeah, you're not kidding.
Hopefully,
that boy
has a life after football because of the.
I worry about him. Yeah, I worry. I'm surprised they almost let him back in the league, or maybe not let him back in the league, but I'm surprised teams signed him.
Yeah,
but shit. Yeah.
So I didn't mean to go on a tangent, but this has been on my mind a lot. I listened to a Freakonomics podcast this past week, and Mark Cuban was on. Who owns the Mavericks and
Shark Tank guy, right?
Shark Tank guy, big tech investor guy. Like I'm a fan, right? But so Freakonomics podcast is about economics and so it's he was asked if you as far as like he was looking to buy into the NFL and buy into other leagues and whatever, right? So he was asked like, okay, so if you could choose like buy, sell, or hold these different things, like what would you buy, what would you sell, what would you hold, like your position in these various things, right? So he would hold his position in the NBA, makes sense, he's an owner, he's not gonna mess that up, but he would sell, he wouldn't go in on the NFL because of the CTE thing. He thinks like that's a disaster. But he'd buy on esports. And that is a hugely growing thing.
That's crazy, but I get that too. hugely growing. And in places you wouldn't expect, like I guess in Dallas, there's an arena.
That is fucked up. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So we think of Dallas as being the mecca of football, really. Outside of Green Bay, right? Like, I was down there, and you see this temple of football, and like they have an arena dedicated to esports, and I see that. I mean, in other parts of the world, it's already overtaken regular sports, like in Korea, right? And so like the power worldwide, we see this as not being able to change. Or like, if we take the violence out, like we're doomed. Like it's going to have to change, and if they don't do it soon enough, it's not going to matter. So I'm really, I don't know. Like this is a really crucial. This is what's like called an inflection point, right? Like they either got to go up or go down. They got to make a decision.
Yeah,
and
they're coming up on the collective bargaining agreement.
Exactly, and that's what I mean. Like this is a crucial time.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I don't know, and it just ties into that discussion. It's just this whole thing worries me, and I feel like it's gonna get worse before it gets better.
Yeah, the other interesting point you made. I mean, you're looking at it almost completely. Well, I'll say Mark Cuban is looking at it completely from like an economics, money making standpoint, which I get. There's kind of two sides of it, there's that part of it, and then there's the emotion, we'll call it the emotional side of it, and the empathy side of the players and all that. To your point, you're right, it has to change for the economics of everything.
It's all related. It's all related.
Yeah, it is.
Even if you're a heartless owner, like you're gonna get sued. Like it doesn't matter.
Right. It is all like cogs in a wheel, so to speak. So they are all unrelated. No, that was a good discussion. I don't think a whole lot I haven't thought about the CTE stuff for years.
Well, like in this off season, I feel like these are the important like off season topics. Like there's Packer things to talk about, but I think like the global NFL things, there's so much. There's so many of these types.
You're right. This is an inflection point. It's good. That's a perfect term for it because of all this stuff going on, like what we just talked about with the health of players, but also the money with players and the money with the league and all that. And I mean, I can't wait I'm going to get your popcorn for this freaking.
Oh, I know, right?
For this collective bargaining. This is going to be. I have no idea. It's not going to be pretty. I can't imagine it's going to be pretty. But the only way the players are going to have any say ever is to sit out games. It's the only way ever.
Yep, right.
Well, they can't. Sit out and do this. I think they have to sit out games.
Yep.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And like after listening to Mark Cuban, I'm like, I think we're at peak NFL. I think it's not growing after this.
True.
Which is,
See, I don't think that there's many people out there that are talking about. I mean, there's a lot of people concerned with the safety, but I don't think there's a lot of people that are saying that we need to change the game 180, or otherwise we're going to lose the game. You know, I don't think it's getting to that point. I think everybody's concerned about the safety, but I guess how far do we take it then? If we are concerned about the safety, how far do we take that?
Yeah, I hear you. You know, the other part of this to me is if you have the safety of the league, obviously, the safety of the players and all that. But the other thing is just the quality itself of the product. It is going down and down and down because of officiating, because of suspensions, because of, you know, they have a real problem with officiating, and I'm talking everything around it, everything surrounding it. You know what I mean? Everything. Yeah. It is. I hate to say it's ruining, but it is. It is ruining the freaking game.
Yeah.
And it's getting worse before it's getting better. They can't say what's a catch. I mean, we've gone over this ad nauseum. What's a catch? What's a sack? And it's just becoming ridiculous on every, you know, basically on any play where there's not a flag, you're surprised. You're like, oh my God, no flag. You know, they got to do something about that. I don't know what the hell they're going to do, but Jesus, is it a mess?
They have to do something about the fact that maybe the league can actually, you know, get into the game, go to the referee and say, hey, we need to look this over again, because the Saints game, for example, in the NFC Championship game, they truly should have been in the Super Bowl. And that call was about as worse as the 2012 call in Seattle, where, you know, we lost the game over the Hail Mary and obviously the interception. The league has to be able to step in, and they have to be able to say, you know what, you missed that, we're going to override you, because that is truly, like you talked about, the interest level in the game will go down if the referees continue to lose games of that stature.
You know what's the interesting thing I was just thinking about while I brought that up, was in some weird twisted way, it still keeps everybody talking about it. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
I never really quite thought about that a lot, but it's like it's this marketing beast that any news, bad or good, is good news. You know, it's because I remember when after the Saints thing, it was for days there was shit all over Twitter. All over the place. You had the frickin' who is it? The senator from Louisiana, and he brought. Did you see that? He brought up like PowerPoints, and he was showing all these things to these guys. And I'm sitting there going, "This is a crock of shit." But at the same time, I'm going, "Well, the NFL's, you know, they're getting their way. It's being talked about on the Senate floor."
Yeah, so, you know, on the officiating front, I think they need some. I think they need more cameras. I think they need sensors. I think they need sensors in the helmet, sensors in the uniform, sensors on the field. I think these are all solvable problems. You know, like
technology could definitely help them there.
I mean, this is not science fiction. These are things we have right now that can fix the game. All these things that are like, oh, I don't know, it's an opinion. These aren't opinions. These are things that could be fixed tomorrow. Like, and then there's no question. It's like, well, the sensor says this, done, boom. There's no question, and then the problem is that it brings the you know, when we're talking, like, if, you know, it brings the legitimacy of the winner away, right? You know, so okay, well, we you know, we don't feel like the Patriots deserve to win the Super Bowl. And it just dirties the game.
I don't believe the Patriots deserve to be. You were waiting.
Deserve to be at all. They
I knew you guys were waiting for me to say a word. Deserve to be what? And I'm like, deserve to be what? And I'm like, no, they don't deserve to be.
Well played. Nice. Nice. That might be your best. That might be the all-time best one-liner that you've ever dropped.
Oh God.
You know what?
I hate them so much. I'm so jealous.
It's taken you a while, but I can safely say you're back to 100%.
Oh my God. Yeah. It's on that real quick. It's like the Super Bowl. It's like, even when the Patriots were in the Super Bowls before, I would watch them, and I'd watch the whole Super Bowl, not for the commercials or any of that crap. I'd still watch, you know. This year, I I almost forgot the Super Bowl was on. Like literally, I was like, oh yeah, Super Bowl's on. I'm like, I'm not gonna watch it. That's how far I've gone against the Patriots.
It's such a long off season though that like I feel like we're begging for football. Like I just try to hang on to the last second of it.
Right.
I hear that. I get that. I get that part of it. I was just I'm just an ass, and I didn't want to give them the time of day.
I also
the satisfaction of another fan watching.
I totally feel that too. I was I was a little pained. I really
speaking of,
it was one of the boring Super Bowl games in my recent memory. That's for sure.
In every way, including
sounds
halftime.
like it.
Right.
Lord,
I'm like, at least we got the halftime show. We didn't even have
the worst halftime. It was terrible. Like I don't even really hate that guy, but like, what?
Oh, is that Maroon 5?
Yeah, like I wouldn't say I'm a fan, but I'm like, whatever. I don't hate everything he's ever done.
I can safely say I'm not a fan.
I am
not a fan.
I wouldn't seek his stuff out on Apple Music or Spotify or anything, but like whatever. I wouldn't like hate on it, but like it was terrible. Like he was not good.
The caveat to it all, though, is there were many famous acts that turned down an opportunity to because of the collusion case with Colin Kaepernick and stuff. So
which we will get to later.
I think that actually that was I think that was really a big part of that whole settlement. Good point.
Could be. Alrighty. So speaking of Packers offseason, we can now go into some players that are on the team. Rodgers throwaway issues. There was a fantastic article on Cheesehead TV, another blog site. They've been around for a long, long time. I want to say at least a dozen years. And they published, his name's Dusty Evely, follow him on Twitter. And he did this film study. It was really intensive, but it was outstanding, of all the throwaways that Rodgers had this year, because he had a ton. Way more than anybody else in the league, and way more than he normally has himself. And I want to say he had like 59 throwaways, something like that. I don't have the exact number here, but what he did, just to kind of frame this up, was he divided the throwaways into certain sections in terms of how they came about. One of them was, pressure up the middle. I think one of them was pressure on the edge. One was guys weren't getting open, things of that nature. And it was fantastic. I actually forwarded it over to Jeremy, and I think Jeremy really broke that down. I mean, I read the article. I didn't go by every single GIF or anything like that, but I'm going to kind of defer to Jeremy on this one. I think it's fantastic, but you're probably going to have more, we'll call it educated insights on it than I would.
I'll try my best, but
no, you'll be fine.
Of the 59 throwaways, they kind of segregated each throwaway into a particular category. The overriding categories that came away were 23 of those 59 throwaways were a direct result of immediate pressure. Which means offensive line obviously did not do their job, or maybe the defense were blitzing a lot and the offensive line couldn't block everybody. The other 21 of the 59 were a result of no one being open. So the majority of those were factors that account for the majority of those two right there. 44 out of the 59 were because he either had pressure or nobody was open.
Yeah.
And that's significant in many ways. Number one, he even narrowed it down to where the pressure came from, and 61% of the throwaways were caused by pressure up the middle. So, which I think we all kind of thought that maybe our tackles were probably, or our right tackle especially, could have been the weakness of it, but it proved that our right guard position was a huge hole, and teams attacked that with persistence.
Well, both guards, really,
Lane Taylor had a poor year, no doubt, but the negative to the offensive line was definitely Justin McCray and anybody else that played right guard this year. It was horrendous. Yeah. So, a lot of that pressure came from the middle and that side of it. The thing that I have to say about it, and I think it's a great breakdown. I love this kind of stuff because this really kind of then hammers out where the issues are at. But there's another caveat that kind of comes into play with this year with Aaron Rodgers kind of pretty much throwing the game away. Now, on how many of these plays did Aaron override the initial call that came in, and then it would go to Davante Adams and say, "Hey, I want you to run this ISO," or to whoever else, and then everybody else is sitting there like,
So what you're talking about? You're not talking about an audible. You're talking about him just screwing everybody along the whole damn offense.
Potentially. I mean, I'm not going to go out there and point fingers like that.
Because what I'm saying is, an audible, obviously, everybody knows how to slide the protection when you change an audible. They should know about that. I do know that that sounds like some of the guys that were talking out there in the offseason, it might have been even Bennett from last year and all that, were saying that every now and then he'd just change it and he'd only tell the play to like one or two other guys. That's not an audible. That's like freelancing on a level that should not be.
Well, it goes back to, you're right. And I'm going to take it a little off topic here.
I just wanted to delineate those two,
And I'm going to point it back to
one is sabotage and the other is poor execution, I guess.
Yes, and there was a combination of both. I'm also going to point it back to the players. Davante Adams this year was targeted on 168 passes, which was second highest to Julio Jones. Outside of that, nobody was even in the 80s. On this offense.
Wow.
So
holy cow.
How staggering of a number is that we only truly, and maybe it's just because Aaron Rodgers trusted Adams and didn't trust anybody else. That could be another factor.
Just hit it right there.
But I mean, that's a staggering fact into we need another weapon or two, Yeah.
How easy is it to defend a guy who's getting that many? I mean, I shouldn't say easy to defend because he still beat guys, but they're doubling him every game, and then they're saying somebody else beat you, and nobody could or can.
Right, and it goes to show you how good of a player he is because he had well over 100 receptions and double-digit touchdowns and over 1,500 yards of receiving.
Sterling Sharp's record. I think
he was 2 receptions away from breaking it. He was 2 receptions away.
And remember what I used to call him? I think I used to call him Drop Vontae.
Yeah, I think everybody did.
He turned himself around. That is, like I said, I'll eat crow on him. He's fantastic. But yeah, he's the only guy. Jesus.
Yeah, I bow down to his ability to get to that level now because the talent was there. But the biggest thing, and it kind of goes back to a relief pitcher in baseball. When you keep on getting, smashed, that mind battle of trying to get over that mental hurdle of, I need to get that confidence back. The same thing in professional sports. In Adam's case, you're continuously not able to do something what you're being paid to do is catch the ball. How hard that had to be to get over that hurdle and then now become one of the top 10 receivers in the league. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's great. It's fantastic. When the immediate pressure, there were times, to your point, like up the gut or whatever, where like he'd snap the ball and he'd have guys in his lap. I hate to go back to the Patriots again, but have you seen some of the stats on Brady in that line and the lack of pressure they give up? It is astonishing.
The football is one. I will continue to say this. Football is one in the trenches.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
If you can block for your quarterback, you're going to do pretty well.
He would go 100 dropbacks without getting any pressure. Not a sack, not a hurry, not a hit. I mean, now, obviously, he's getting the ball out really quick, and Rodgers wasn't getting the ball out really quick because either he wasn't trusting what he was seeing, or nobody was open, or pressure was there too quick, Well, I think it was all the above.
Right, and I think more so than any part of his career, I think he had more hesitation this year.
Oh, yeah.
And evenly categorized that as well. He said 11% of the passes were categorized as hesitation. So he was holding on to the football too long or, couldn't make the decision really quickly because, guys were obviously not.
And when pressure is in your face all the time, you start seeing ghosts and you start feeling pressure that isn't even there.
Right.
Yeah. Doesn't it feel like it was more than 11%?
Yeah.
It does.
It felt like every other play.
That's what I mean. I was going to say, boy, if I was the guess, it'd be a little more like 20-30%. Dang.
Yeah. So I think that kind of that article, number one, it was just very interesting, really methodical, but it also, the way it broke down, you're kind of wanting to say, who's doing this? Why is this happening in this? And one thing that came to mind, a lot more than it did during the season, when I was watching the games in real time, was this offensive line sucks. They got Bakhtiari and they got Lindsley and then nothing. So 3 out of the 5 guys are junk. And I mean, I love Bulaga, but he's always hurt. And when he's near the end of his career, basically. And so when he would play, he would be playing hurt. So he was, I hate to say he was junk, but he wasn't very good. So, I mean, more than half your line was shit.
Well, I can tell you what, because of the Packers' dearth of needs across the team, I think they're going to be forced to want to bring back Bulaga next year, but they're going to have a plan B with him. They're going to have a suitable backup in case for the inevitable of where he's going to get hurt. Because, when he was healthy last year, he was probably top 15 pass blocker in the league. When healthy, that's the key. And that side of the ball, you don't have to worry about that pass rusher typically when Bulaga's over there. So I don't think he's lost it. I think he still has plenty left in the tank. He's definitely not the player that he was once. Well, he's definitely the player that he's not once, but he still has something left in the tank. Is it a starter? I mean, they might be forced to have to probably put him out there. They really will because,
who are they going to rely on? Spriggs?
No.
I was just going to say Spriggs.
And here's the
what are they going to do with that guy?
I don't know. But here's the problem. Free agency is another way in the draft, are the two ways that you can improve upon yourself internally. But here's the issue with free agency. Tackles and guards are one of your highest paid players besides a quarterback and a receiver and a pass rusher in the league. So if you're going to go into free agency and go after somebody as a top 5 offensive lineman, you're going to be paying him $15 million a year.
They won't.
You can't do that. So you have to go to that second tier of players. There's a guy from Buffalo named John Miller. He just came out of his rookie contract and started every game in his 4 years in Buffalo. He'd be a guy that would not command a high salary, maybe a $4 to $5 million a year salary, but would be a lot better than anybody that we had here currently. So those are the kind of signings that they're going to have to go out there and mix it up with, because if they're going to go out and sign a $15 million a year offensive guard, they're going to be not able to fill anything else on that team.
I agree.
Or very limited to.
I definitely agree. Yeah, like I said, that the line is a mess. I mean, you talk about they got needs everywhere, but that line, Jesus.
I would put that need up there as number 1. I think the offensive guard has to be filled. Yes.
Number 1, huh? Interesting.
I would.
I mean, I'm not going to argue with you. Like,
what would you
it's amazing what a good line will do.
And not so much just because of the want, but we get back to investing. We've invested this much money into Aaron Rodgers, so you got to protect him. Otherwise, you're just throwing that money out the window.
Yeah, no, you're right. Definitely.
Well, and worse, even if you don't protect him, if we end up in a situation where we have somebody worse in there,
right? Right.
Like there's no universe where that's not an important need. Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah,
you're right.
No, I definitely agree. So I got to think they're going to be identifying. Shit, I don't know who would be available at 12 tackle. Well, that'd be I don't know. Are they going to? Do you think they can go that high? If there's anybody there, I don't know.
Offensive line wise, I mean, there's not a lot of depth there in the draft. I mean, there's a lot of depth with the pass rushers, and I think that's probably where they're going to attack in the 12 position.
Nah, they're going to trade out for more picks. You know it.
If they do, mark my words, I will become a Viking fan. So.
Oh my God.
I'll be done.
You heard it here first, and we have it recorded.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't think they will. I'm being silly, but Jesus, I mean, if it was Ted still doing it, nothing would surprise me.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. So along those lines, there's a bullet here in some of our notes. It says, "Did Rodgers sabotage some of the year?" Hard to say he didn't. I think a lot of it is hyperbole, but who the hell knows? I mean, you're seeing other players come out. That tight end wasn't Kendricks. It was who the heck was it?
Lewis.
Mercedes Lewis came out and said he was drawing up plays in the dirt and throwing guys, just coming up with his own plays and not listening to anything McCarthy said. I know he would do that from time to time in the past. He probably did a lot this year, but sabotage is a strong word. But hell, maybe he did. I don't know.
Well,
yeah, it's a matter of it's a matter of like judging whether it was malicious or just apathetic, right? Like,
I think a lot of times it'd be more apathetic. I mean, but
yeah,
Rodgers is still a really calculating guy. You know, beneath apathetic could be pretty malicious. Who knows? You know, yeah. So you know, I don't know how much time we can actually spend on this particular topic, just because it's all, a lot of it's just hearsay, but I do remember watching a lot of games going, how many times are they going to do this over and over and over and over and over? You know, the definition of insanity, doing the same thing, expecting different results. Right. How much of that was McCarthy? How much of that was Rod? You know what I mean? It was just it's a strange feeling. And you gotta, I remember telling myself so many times, I go, Rodgers has to know that he's holding onto the ball for 5 seconds trying to throw it 50 yards down the field on like every other play. He's not that stupid that he knows he's doing that. But why is he doing that, you know? And I don't have an answer for that.
There is no solid answer. There truly is. I mean, if he had 20 interceptions, then you know that he was taking some risks, but he wasn't even doing
2.
that. So, right.
Yeah.
Which I commend him for that, because I'd prefer to have this over Brett Favre losing games at the end because he's trying to, sling it in between a rock and a hard place. But
yeah, I hear you. Next bullet, and this is more about kind of Rodgers, but also McCarthy. Okay, so Jeff Janis went on a podcast. I think this was actually about 2 weeks ago. We might be a little behind, somewhere in that time frame, the last 10 days or so. And he was being interviewed by kind of like a local blogger type guy, and they got into comments about, or just stories about McCarthy and Rodgers. And Jeff Janis, we all remember him. He was like the Great White Hope or something. He was fast as hell in a straight line, but outside of that, he couldn't do much else. But even he piled on, and said that Rodgers would change plays, and he thought Rodgers was like kind of surly, and again, this is Jeff Janis we're talking about here. It's not Jordy Nelson, but I just find it interesting that it's kind of where there's smoke, there's fire type thing. But then he made a really silly comment at the end when I was listening to it in the car. Jeff Janis said this, and he says, the offense only had 6 or 7 route combinations, and it was really easy to figure out. And part of me's going, yeah, but you couldn't figure it out, buddy.
Right.
I mean, right. So it's like, it was interesting to hear all that, but I'm going, you couldn't figure it out, and then you got cut. And then, or I don't know if he got cut or if his contract just lapsed, but he went to the Browns. He's out of the league now. He was on the Browns for a little bit, but he's completely out of the league now. So, take what he said with a grain of salt. It's just another guy, though, that is putting, fuel on the fire about a big schism between McCarthy and Rodgers, though. Maybe not necessarily just pile on Rodgers, but just something with McCarthy and Rodgers. So
right.
That's about all I can say about that.
The podcast, I know you gave me the link because I couldn't think of it, but the gentleman was Davis Maddock. I don't remember his podcast name, but the one kind of comment that kind of, I pay more attention to and I put more weight in was when he was talking about Rodgers' field demeanor and his body language. And Janis touched on he touched on Rodgers probably not being the most positive enforcement out there, but to the point where he would just continuously harp on you and tear you down and break a player down. I think that kind of sticks more in my craw than anything else, because if he's not out there, I know this year was a horrible year, but if you're not out there, patting your teammates in the back and standing up for them, which I felt like he didn't do, then your positive reinforcement scale is at 0, and you need to be able to give your players positive reinforcement to make them feel like they're a part of the team. I mean, these are adults and these are professional players. I get that, but you also need to lead by example, and you need to lead with positive reinforcement. And I feel like Janis with that comment really kind of gave me that head turner where I was like, oh. Okay, so there are some issues with that. The other thing that he did talk about was McCarthy's conservative play calling. I'm going to read this quote for quote. He said, Janis on McCarthy, he said, quote, "It starts to separate the connection you have between the coaches and the players. If you don't trust your coaches on calling the right plays, it is just going to make things that much harder. And I think that is what you saw this year with the Packers and Coach McCarthy." End quote. So, I think I don't think that he's saying anything that hasn't been said before, and I think we all know that conservative play calling this year, was definitely a thing. But those two things just kind of stuck out to me, and the ability to lead. And I guess that's where I question Aaron Rodgers at this point in time in his career is, does he have the ability to lead this team? I truly don't know, because I think he's very negative and he's very smart. He's probably one of the most intelligent guys you're going to come across in understanding the game. He's literally a coach on the field, but I think he's almost like an antagonistic, coach on the field where, players just, they kind of give up on him.
It's almost like this. I look at it like, and this isn't the best comparison, but I think it's apt. Michael Jordan. It's like Michael Jordan wanted everybody around him to play as well and be, just basically be as good as he was. Well, that's fucking impossible. There's only one Michael Jordan, right. So it's like this, what do you call it? Just, you're kind of set up to fail, so to speak, and Rodgers, he loves taking pot shots and all this passive aggressive crap. The positive reinforcement thing, I'm kind of like, boo-hoo in a way, but I get that too. You don't want to be negative all the time. But it is the NFL. And what that also kind of, when he said that, Janis said is, I'm kind of going, there wasn't any accountability on this team. I mean, and I keep going back to my favorite team, the Patriots. Could you imagine this crap being pulled on the Patriots?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Janis going into Belichick's office going, Rodgers is yelling at me. He won't help me. I mean, Belichick would have his ass on probably not even a plane. He'd probably have him on like a Greyhound bus.
So, on the one hand, I
accountability
with saying accountability, right? I totally agree with that. These guys are paid a lot of money. I was the first one saying like, hey, you missed your kicks. We should have cut Crosby, right?
Yeah.
But these are teammates, and in every sense of the word, more so than people that work a regular job. They need to have some camaraderie, and nobody can function at work. You can't play a 3-hour game on the field in any job, much less a high intensity 3-hour, you got to perform every second type of situation, without some camaraderie. And I think that matters a lot. I think that if anything, we're kind of casting that aside a bit. I think that might be the most important thing.
Good. One thing I wonder about. Yeah. One thing I wonder about Janis though too, and this goes back to the drafting philosophy, the team building philosophy. You almost wonder, did McCarthy even want Janis when Ted drafted him and he makes the team he's doing? Did he even want him on the team? I mean, I wonder about that, because you remember in that Arizona game, like at the very end when he caught that Hail Mary to get into overtime. I mean, he proved that under duress he could do something.
Right.
I'm talking Janis, Rodgers obviously, but Janis could, and that led to nothing, absolutely nothing. He got buried even more almost. Now, who knows all the reasons, but I tend to think that McCarthy never wanted him, or McCarthy was too. Maybe there's some coaches that are too fed up with what guys can't do versus what they can. That was one thing my boy Belichick. I always go back to it. He always says, "Tell me what he can do. Don't keep telling me what he can't do." And I wonder about that with other NFL coaches. They just go, "This guy can't do that. He can't do that. He can't do that." So it's already stacked against you. And I think, I think it's patently obvious how pushy it got under McCarthy towards the end there. I mean, it was ridiculous. I mean,
that's a great perspective.
I don't know. So who the hell knows? I mean, that's obviously just one of my thoughts. There's nobody coming out and saying that, but you have to wonder, Okay, I got a jet here pretty soon, so I'm going to see if we can get through some of this other stuff. Now, Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell, there's all these rumors that they may come to the Packers, or there's all these people on social media saying they want them to come to the Packers. Antonio Brown, the malcontent wide receiver with the Steelers, and Le'Veon Bell, the malcontent running back with the Steelers. Both are great players, but I don't want either one of them. Jeremy, your thoughts?
Three words. Just stop it.
Pretty much. No, I agree. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Seriously. I mean, let's think about this, people. Antonio Brown gave up on his team when they needed him the most to get into the playoffs. I mean, they needed him to play in that last game, and he gave up on his team. Le'Veon Bell, for selfish reasons, for personal reasons, he held out because he felt he was worth more than what he was going to get $14 million from the franchise tag. Kudos. I give him credit. But, we just we've just gone through a year where this team pretty much gave up on everybody. And we want to bring in two guys that gave up on their team, and now Pittsburgh wants to pretty much jettison the wave for pretty much nothing. Come on, seriously, people.
Yeah.
And also the salary. The salary.
Yeah, they're going to command over $30 million between those two.
Well,
Get the hell out of here.
Antonio Brown has an existing contract. His cap figure this year was close to $22 million.
Holy shit!
Think about that. Think about that.
I don't want to think about it.
Yeah, that's a no-brainer.
But I will. Yeah. And I mean, Bell is a great back, but he's been out of the league for a year or two. And even if it was okay, let's just try and look at them strictly as football players and not anything else around them. Okay. Yep. Brown, he's a great player, but that's way too much money. Way too much money. And Bell, great running back, but it's running back. And he's been out of the entire league for an entire year.
Yeah.
Not good.
Yeah, that's a great perspective. And I think the other perspective too is Brown kind of lost his touch with the organization because Juju Smith-Schuster kind of overtook him as a number one receiver, and Brown wants to be the number one. He wants to be the GOAT. When he comes to Green Bay, do you think he's going to be the GOAT with Devontae Adams here? No, it's not going to happen.
Right.
No. Yeah, I'd be absolutely stunned if one or the other or whatever. I mean, it just I see it all over the place though, so I figured we have to at least talk about it. But I think it's stupid and it does need to stop. But what the hell? Okay, so last piece we got here, the news came down about the Colin Kaepernick, Eric Reed, and collusion case that they had with the NFL. So they just settled. What was it? A few days ago, I believe. I want to make sure the date's right here. But basically, they both have a gag order where neither one of them can talk about it. I look at this as I mentioned it, with you guys talking before we started recording. But by virtue of just settling and doing this, another stupid thing the NFL did, but I get why they do it. This has been going on for years and years. I want to say that this thing was filed like 2 years ago. Yeah, filed the grievance October 2017 is what Kaepernick did. I don't know. I guess it's over, so the narrative won't have to continue going and going. But I think I told you guys both this, that Kaepernick wasn't the greatest. Now he looked like fucking Joe Montana times 8 when he played the Packers. He should have, his entire he did get one contract though, didn't he?
Yeah, he got $126 million thanks to us.
And he got it. He should be sending thank you cards every single day to Dom Capers.
Maybe he is. We don't know.
I mean, think about how stupid he made the Packers look time and time. I mean, God Almighty. So he owes that whole contract to the Packers, in my opinion. I'm being facetious, but there's worse quarterbacks out there. There are. I'm sorry. So
yeah, absolutely.
Now is he? Let's say he's maybe kind of middle of the road at best. Yeah. In a quarterback-starved league, that's pretty damn good right now. So I think there was something going on there. I don't know what the hell it was and how prevalent it was or whatever. But I don't know. I mean, part of me is like, okay, I'm glad this is done, but the other part of it, it's just another stupid thing the NFL did.
Yeah, and the part that I would like to know, and I know because now there's a non-disclosure agreement that between two parties, they can't talk about this at all anymore. I would truly like to know what made the NFL decide okay, let's just let's give them some hush money and let's move on. Was it the fact that they were going to have a hearing this spring and that would have forced some facts coming into the equation that everybody would have heard? Was it a protection?
I think so.
was it a protection by the NFL? Knowing that there was going to be some stuff that would have come out against them, was it a protection that they just kind of said, okay, we need to stop this? I mean, that's what my opinion is. They likely knew what was there, and they wanted to hush it, and they did a good job of that. Now the rumor is that Colin Kaepernick got between $60 and $80 million as part of this settlement. That's the part of me that I would truly like to know if that truly happened, because if they did, wow.
Damn.
I got no words to explain it.
But what do you? Okay, so let's go like full scale conspiracy theory. Like, what is the worst possible thing that could have come out that would be, that they would want to hush money at?
That a team actively engaged in a contract negotiation with them.
They actively engaged in a contract negotiation, and what?
And there was some talk about him possibly coming to whatever team. I know the Broncos were very interested in him for a time there. Okay.
I think what you're getting at is the rest of the league said, no, we don't want that. Bury it. We don't want him over there. Is that what you're saying?
So you're thinking there's like this email chain with, that's I can just I like what I don't know what happened. Like what is this terrible smoking gun that just is going to make them look so terrible?
There's a document out there that said that the NFL did this and this is what they should be liable for. If it's an email, I don't know. Is it hearsay? I don't know.
And I mean, what to me, I hear what you're saying. It's
and
what does this all boil down to?
Like, I don't know that I disagree. Like, it's like he's a good quarterback, but he's bringing things onto the field that other players are not.
Mm-hmm.
And agree with them or disagree with them, and I'm still not sure how I feel. I like, on one hand, like I agree with the things that he stands for. I'm not sure that I agree with how he's doing it, but I'm not sure that I don't. Like I don't know. But
it's kind of an interesting situation. That's what it is.
Yeah, and then I think, what's the big deal, one way or the other? And I tie my brain in knots thinking about it, but then. Like I don't know. Like the NFL is probably like, like let's just move on. Like we don't want to talk about this at all. Period. And I think that's what the settlement is. They're just like, let's just move on. Period. Like who cares? Let's just pay them and move on. Like I think that's that. I think that's the whole thing.
I think they wanted it to end. The whole narrative and all that kind of stuff to end. I agree with that.
Mm-hmm. I could see that.
I mean that it would be, when you think about it though. Say what Jeremy was saying was true. Say it was true, where he was in active negotiations to go to a team and then it got buried. That sucks. That's if that did indeed, going down the conspiracy, whatever. Shame on anybody for burying that kind of crap. Again, that is kind of conspiracy theory type stuff, and we'll never know. But my God, if they did, it's. All I can say is shame on you. Shame on you.
Agreed.
So.
Yeah.
And I mean, it wouldn't completely shock me if that happened. I would be surprised, but not shocked, I guess, is maybe the best way to put it. So.
Right.
But yeah, as a Packer fan, I don't want to see him ever again.
Well, maybe we got his number now. We got a lot of turnover heading our way. So it's
I'll never forget watching that playoff game. Was it 2012?
That was the worst thing.
It was. He set like all these NFL records for quarterbacks in any game, not just a playoff game. Set like a rushing record in a game by a quarterback, playoff or not. I mean, that was right around the time when Dom Capers' defenses were so bad, everybody was breaking records against them. That was.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if you're talking about the one in January that was here.
No, this was the one before in San Francisco where we got annihilated. He ran for like 220 yards in that game. He threw 2 touchdowns, ran for a touchdown. I mean, it was a freaking. it was like the Benny Hill theme out there on defense with us. I'll never forget the one where like he bootlegged and he went right, and Eric Walden, our outside linebacker, he bit so hard he got turned around. He like tripped over his own 2 feet, and by the time he turned around, every single cornerback in that game was they were playing man. They all had their backs to the quarterback every time, and so if you back to the quarterback every time, he's just going to take off and run. And by the time they turn around, you know what I mean? But on this one where he took it into the end zone around Eric Walden, there was nobody within 20 yards of him the whole entire time. It was so bad.
Right.
Oh, it was embarrassing, you know.
I'm going to leave it.
See, that was the. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Andy. No, go ahead.
I was going to say that's the kind of game that would get a defensive coordinator fired, because they got their pants pulled down on national television.
2 years in a row.
Happened.
2 years in a row.
Nothing happened.
Yeah. I was
nothing
the one here.
Happened.
I went with Jay to the one here. He bought us tickets.
That was the 2011 with the Giants.
Yeah, it was no. That was the one, San Francisco. It was terrible.
Oh well, yeah.
I think it was a playoff game. It was. It had to be.
It was the wild card the year after at Lambeau.
Oh my God, it was so.
I mean, it was terrible. But
so bad. It was so bad. It was probably not worth that one. I don't know. They all blurred another.
I hear you. It was the second one that you're talking about where
and it was so cold. It was so cold.
But it was another time too where Rodgers. I mean, they never scored any points in the fucking playoffs.
You're right.
Jeez.
Right. Yeah, and that's exactly it. You think, well, okay, but our quarterback he's the GOAT, right? So
and then he'd score. They would be hard pressed to score 20 points in a game, you know, consistently.
Well, think about this. During Rodgers' tenure here, we've had to score in the playoffs games. We've had to score at least 25.3 points per game in order to even win a playoff game.
Right.
So is he the GOAT? Or is our defense just that bad?
Defense is that bad. We all know it. We saw it. They had. Yeah. They came together with Hall of Famers in 2010. They had Nick Collins, soon to be Hall of Famer, Charles Woodson. I mean, they had that 4 or 5 game stretch where they just ripped the league a new one, you know. And
to Elliot's point, they had great camaraderie. You know?
Oh yeah. They had 15 guys on IR. Think about the depth they had that year too.
Right. All right, let's call it a day.
All right, boys.
Go Pack Go.
Pack Go. Go Pack Go.
Podcast. Chair. I know, right?